The second invite speaker is Mr. Fatih. He is golfer and coffee geek, and the author of Vim-go. Please welcome Mr. Fatih.
Thank you. I just want to thank first the VimConf organizer for inviting me and for DigitalOcean for supporting to come here. I also give the permission to shoot any photos if you need. It's all okay. You can share it on Twitter, whatever you want. So, all right, let's start this. Wait a second. Okay. So a little bit about me. I'm a senior software engineer at DigitalOcean, and DigitalOcean is a cloud provider for developers. Probably some of you have already used it. I'm the creator of Vim-go and still maintaining it. I'm a contributor to Go itself and have created many different popular Go packages. And I really like tooling. And at DigitalOcean, I still work on tooling and release engineering. And I really like coffee and bags. So I also write a lot of bag reviews. So I want to talk about the journey of Vim-go. But before I can start and talk about it, I want to talk first how it started. And so it all started with Go itself and with the Go programming language. So the Go programming language was actually started in 2007 when Rob Pike, Ken Thompson, and Robert Griesheimer sat down and they talked about the problems they have challenged at Google. And then they say, hey, we have C++, we have Java, we have Python, but none of them work for us. So how do we fix it? And so they started to write a language from scratch. And this started in 2007, but it was released as open source in 2009. And then in 3 years, the version 1.0 was released. And Go is a simple, reliable, and efficient program language. And it was an immediate success after releasing it. So of course, my talk is not about Go itself, it's about Vim-go. And so this was the first ever commit for Vim itself. This was by David Simmons, a Google engineer. He added syntax highlighting for Go. It was in 2009, so when Go was open source. And this was just adding some keywords and definitions for how to highlight Go itself. And that was the only single plugin. And then 1 year later, another commit was added, and this commit was adding the syntax folder and the file detect folder. So now it started to become more or less as a structured plugin. And 1 year later, 3 commands was introduced into this plugin. By the way, this plugin residues is inside the Go official repository back then. But I'm going to explain more. And so when you run import, for example, it would go and change the import block, and it would just add it. So whenever you are in your file, you would just call it, and it would add. It was really simple, but it was really useful back then. And then that year, Go format was also added, and Go formats pretrefies your Go source file. And when you call this command, it organizes your source code according to the printer, official printer. And Go format, some people still don't like it, but I think it's a huge success, huge part of why Go is so successful. And that year, another commit, the complete file was moved to autoload. That was the first commit that the autoload was created. And this was by our Metin itself. And then, like 2 years later, in 2013, make support was added. And so people could compile their source files with the Go tool itself. Of course, this all changes, these improvements only last until 2014. And that year, Rob Pike has decided that the Vim support shouldn't be inside the Go official repository. So it was removed in July 1, 2014. And so he said, hey, there's a lot of patches coming. We are a programming language project. We are not a plugin project. So anyone is free to use whatever he wants or she wants to make. So before it was removed, this was the latest state of that plugin inside the repository. So there were some commands like how to manipulate the import path block or how to format your file. Some folders like the syntax folder, compiler folder, and the file detection. And there was a single README file with the settings and what this plugin is doing. So now, how did Vim-go started? So when in 2014 the plugin was removed, there was many other plugins as well, and Vim-go was one of them. But the question here is how it started at all, you know? And then because people ask this a lot, and they say, hey, there was a lot of plugins, but why is Vim-go so one of the most popular, and why did it succeed, you know? So let me explain it more. So the one reason I think back then the problem was there was too many small plugins. And with plugins, I mean like these are some of them, and there was like 5 or 10 more other. Like so you're using Vim and you want to develop in Go, you had to install various kinds of plugins just to make it work as you would like it. But so I didn't like it, you know. That was the one of the things that I really didn't like, and so I wanted to fix it. The second problem was there was no clear roadmap. So because all these plugins had different individual maintainers and they were doing something different, there was no one, a single person who was leading the project, you know? How should the plugin evolve? What should be added? What should be removed? And I think that's also important for a project. And then, of course, the official Vim plugin inside the repository, which was removed, had also some missing features. For example, it didn't have any documentation. It couldn't test your files or run your source files if needed. And all the binary paths, they were hard-coded, and many other small things. And you know, I'm always trying to make things perfectionize things, make them work just like a car, you know. The engine just runs and everything like seamlessly works. And when you was using this, it didn't have that same feeling. So I had to come with a plan, and the plan was really simple, actually. I was just using the official Vim plugin, which was removed as the base of my new plugin. I would go and integrate all the plugins, and then add features, fix things, and then announce it. So actually, I started this in 2014 as well, but before the official Vim project was removed. So when I made all these changes, I wanted to contribute back to the Go project. But then it was removed. So there was this mailing list, and I said, hey, okay, you know, I already merged misc Vim into my new project. Everyone is free to come and join or whatever. And then, of course, Metin said, hey, I have some issues. I'm going to contribute as well. So he still contributes, by the way. Thanks for him. And so let me show you one of the first commits, 2014, 3 years ago. This was the first Vim-go commit, and the name, if you look carefully, it's called golang.vim. And surprisingly, naming is really hard. When you create a new project, I think this is the one of the hardest things to do. What to name your project? So in my case, it was first called golang.vim, but Golang was not the correct word for the language itself. So I just renamed it to go.vim. And then I said, hey, I don't like the .vim extension. There is like vim-ruby, vim-rails, whatever. I'm just going to call it vim-go. Of course, this people, I think there are two camps, like vim-plugin developers and .vim plugin developers. Of course, that's a personal preference. And then the next thing is I really care about documentation, and there was no single documentation in the official Vim plugin. So I added the docs Vim file, and then added some steps like how to install and use it, like adding all the existing features, because people were using it, but they didn't know what kind of features were there available, because they weren't written in the README. And so one part, what I didn't like, of course, and I still don't like it, I really hate writing help files, because the syntax is very awkward. It's like Markdown, but it's not Markdown. I don't know who came up with it, but Hayabusa said, patches welcome. I hope some adventure here goes and edit Markdown support for this. I'm looking forward for that. So anyway, when I created docs, one of the things I did was adding the banner. That's one of the things I always saw in plugins. And then you see how organized it is, and it has all the things when you just want, okay, mapping, settings, it's all there right now. And the next step is I had some usability fixes. Of course, if you don't use this plugin or never use Go, it might be a little it probably doesn't make sense for you, but it really improved the state of when you're using Vim-go. And for example, one of the things is because the Vim plugin uses a lot of tools that you have installed, I created this command called go install binaries, which would automatically install all the binaries. And then one of the things I also made is, we had variables like g:\bin_pad, and I think that's really wrong. Bin_pad, what does it mean? And everything is global in Vim, right? So what I did is I've added prefixes, like the go prefix, to each command and to each setting. And for example, if you run go install binaries, these are some of the tools that get installed to your system. And I'm going to explain more about this later. So these just are some of the tools that we installed. And then we made some under the hood improvements. For example, when you call make, it compiles your source files, and then also creates a binary. So now at DigitalOcean, I'm at the delivery team, which is responsible of shipping services to production. And we never, ever allow people to compile their binary on their own laptop, localhost, and then ship it. So when I was working on Vim-go, I had always the same mindset. Nobody should use make to create a binary. That's part of the release or your release pipeline. So, but why is make useful? Because when you call make, a double column make, you want to see if it compiled, so you want to see if it has succeeded, or you want to see if there is an error and you want to jump it. That's it. You don't want to deal with the binary, usually. So, there are many small usability fixes like this under the hood, and I think that also improves how you use Vim-go. And we also added some features and improvements in 2014, and so these are some of the commands that we added. And there is, like, for example, a go run. You can just call your source file. There, we added like linters and checkers, and then we have like coverage, which is really cool feature. It was also, the initial plugin was written by Yukinari Toyota. I don't know if he is here, but I just want to thank for him, which was also merged to Vim-go. And then, of course, we also added many other commands that gives you a glimpse of what your source code is doing, what does this identifier means? What happens when I jump to this identifier? Things like that. And all these commands were really, really useful back then. And then some other additions like Windows support, Go format was really, really great. And we made it like that it runs automatically on save. Of course, you can disable it, and many other things as well. So here is a demo of Go coverage. Before I run this, so on the left side is your Go source file, and on the right side is your test file. And the foo function, it just accepts a string and tests it. If it's Fatih, it returns bar. If it's Arslan, it returns foo. So on the right side, you see I'm passing Fatih. So the foo function should return a bar. If not, there's an error. So when I run Go coverage, you see it highlights the part that is tested and not tested. And because I tested Fatih, it highlighted it green. All right. So in 2015, this was the year where we released the first we released the first version, and after over 1,000 commits later, I thought it was the time to release it as 1.0. We had like Windows support and many small improvements, and it also was the point where it gained a lot of traction. Of course, when I started using versioning, it was not always the same. I usually was incrementing the patch level. When I was releasing something, I was doing 1.0.1, 1.0.2, and stuff like that. And I said, hey, this is wrong. Why do I do this? This is really wrong. So I'm just gonna fix it. And then I was increasing the minor levels in 1.1, 1.2, and stuff like that, which allows us also to release patch levels if needed. And we still don't have version 2. I'm not sure when I'm gonna release it. But yeah, I think sometimes numbers also doesn't mean, because people just use master or whatever. But distributions use it, so this is important. And so I also started experiment with donation because I put a lot of efforts. What if I could get back something from there? So I started adding Kindle ebook donation because people started to ask, hey, I really like Vim-go. I want to donate you. How do I do it? I said, hey, no, I don't need money. And then people keep asking. And I said, okay, I really like reading books. So I created this Kindle wish list with the books I really like, I want to read. And I just put it in the README. And then people just start donating. I had 50, over 40, 50 books. And it was really great. But I couldn't read all of them, which I'm going to explain. I also changed that later again. And then in 2015, we also added license. And So this was also important because Vim-go had started to be packaged into into Linux distributions, like a Debian, Arch Linux, or whatever, you know. And then they required me to have a license because they would come and ask, hey, is there any license? What should I use? And so I didn't have any idea, but I just thought, hey, why don't I use the license that is also used by Go itself? And I think it's a very permissive license. You can do anything. You can fork it. I think you can do anything with it. The only thing is you can't use the Vim-go name and advertise it. And I didn't want this because sometimes there are like companies or corporations who don't do good things. Of course, in 2015, we added more improvements and features, like static analysis. It was actually started in 2014, but it was changing always. And in 2015, it was more stable. And this allowed people to check, for example, if you had a function, you could see where this was called or used. And now we also improved the syntax highlighting, the Go path detection, and many other things. We also added some commands, like the Go meta linter. And this is, again, this combines all the checkers and linters into one single command. And you can configure this. You can say, hey, I just want to use air check or wet. These are like individual tools that you can use. And then I also added some commands that would make the testing more like efficient. Sometimes, for example, you're writing your test file. You don't want to run it. You just want to check if it compiles or not, which the Go test compile does it. And the Go test func is for if you want to test individual single functions without running all the function. And then 2016 was one of the, I think, most important years because of NeoVim. So this made me a lot of excited because this was the time where we could do anything asynchronously, you know. So we did it, you know, at the Go build, Go test, everything was asynchronized. But with that, you know, challenges also was coming. For example, you're building your source file, but how do you know if it's finished or not? You know, there needs to be some kind of feedback loop or notification. And then we added like a status line integration, which made like when your build was finished, it would show it. And we also added like terminal support. And for example, here's a demo of it. And for example, this has coloring, like a blue or green. You see on the right side that it just colors it. And it also runs, for example, in the loop, you see it's also dynamic. You know, it's actually just a terminal implementation. But I really like it because it's more dynamic, you know. And okay, in 2016, I said I was using Kindle, and then I had so many books, I couldn't read them anymore. And I said, okay, let's change this a little bit more. And so I changed the donation to a Patreon. I just created this and said, hey, guys, you know, it takes a lot of time to develop a plugin like this. So you could donate if you want. It's totally optional. And then I changed it, you know, and I started last year in April. And then we had many tiers, but you can also give just $1 if you want. It's all up to you. But you know, the initial success, it was really good. People really loved Vim-go, and they just started donating. It's now around $200 per month. But I think this is really good. This makes me feel good. And you know, sometimes like developers, you know, we all hear people they don't want to add donation, or they're like shy adding and asking for things like that. But we shouldn't do that, in my opinion, because we're spending our free time on developing all these awesome things, and then I think there should be a way of also getting from them back. And for example, with this donation money, I have 2 scholarships in Turkey. I give money to 2 students, which I really like because they can increase their expertise while they're studying. And then I also buy little toys for my son, for example. And this makes me happy. Of course, 2016 was, again, I said it was a big year. And so Vim 8.0 was released. Again, everything async, but this time for Vim. And because we were using status line now for a couple of months, I knew that there was some bugs and fixes, so I totally rewrote it. And then, but the thing was here that when this was released, it was not quite perfect, you know. So I just wrote this on Twitter back then. I said, hey, okay, you know, this is released, but this doesn't work always. You know, this is really, it's not like NeoVim. When NeoVim was released, it was really working well. And then, like, in my code, I had a lot of wrappers like this, you know. I would check if a specific patch was added because it was not working until this patch was included. So even though 8.0 was released, it was not ready. You know, you had to use 8.0.0087 or something else. And so I always used has job instead of using the has function. And this is here again a demo. For example, I'll just open it, and then I run it. You know, you see the status line integration. It shows the duration as well. And then you can also test, and you see the name is changing as well. And then, for example, let's open a file that compiles more longer, you know. And now it's started building in the background. You know it started, and it's still asynchronously, and then it's finished, you know. And then you can say, oh, okay, it's finished. So I still use it, and I think it's a really great feature. So what makes Vim-go actually so powerful? There's there's only one reason, and that's because we are using tools that are also written in Go itself. So what we do is, instead of implementing all these features in Vim script, we actually use a binary that is written in Go, and we call it via the system or via the job start functions. And the tool runs, it does some calculations, it reads the buffer or whatever, and then it outputs in JSON or in Vim script output. Actually, there's also Go package that can output in Vim script. Then you can use eval function to return it back to a Vim data structure. So, of course, just using system wasn't enough because when you rely on these kind of stuff, you have to be sure that it's run on all systems. And then people started opening issues saying, hey, I'm using fish shell, or I'm using Windows, and this doesn't work. So we had to wrap this with a function instead of just using system itself. Now we are using Go util system. And everywhere, if it's like a blocking call, not asynchronized, this function is being used. So why is it really powerful to use a tool that's written in Go? So the thing is, Go has really great standard library to parse Go source code itself. And then it's really fast, and it returns you an abstract syntax tree, which allows you to do anything with the source code. You know, you can rewrite it, you can use that information to display something, anything. And so here's an example. You know, this is just a simple struct. And in Go, you can, for example, write a JSON tag. Now, when I call go add text JSON, a tool is called in the background. It parses all the source code, and then it gets the first field name, and then rewrites the buffer according to the output. And this was first implemented in Vim script, and it was really, really hard because, for example, there are two struct keywords here, like type example struct and service struct inside the struct. So when we were using regex, we had to be sure that it also handles add cases like this. But with the Go parser, you don't have to, because you can directly access the field itself. And for example, here's again how it works. On the left side is our buffer, Vim buffer, and then we're passing this buffer to, or the file to the tool itself. Here the tool is called Go modify text, and then this tool outputs it's in JSON. Now inside Vim-go, we use the system function to get the output, and then we decode it by using the JSON decode. And now we have the lines and start and the result, and then we just use set line and iterate it. And this is also very performant because it doesn't replace all the buffer. It only replaces the individual lines in your Vim buffer. And this is just one example, and let me show you a demo of another example. Okay, wait a second. I hope it works. It works. Oh, wait. Okay. Okay, where is this? Okay, okay. Okay. All right. So, so this is a Go file. So, for example, another tool we use is Motion, which is used for creating text objects. For example, this allows us to select a function or select inside a function. So, for example, here I can use VIF, and then it selects inside the function. Or I can use, okay, wait, okay, or like VAF, it will select around the function. But here is an important thing, the comment is also part of the function in a Go source file. So when I use the tool itself under the hood, it also is aware of the comment itself. What this means is, for example, suppose in this function, my cursor here is here, right, in the comment. So when I select the function with VAF, my cursor doesn't have to be inside the function. It can be anywhere if it's part of the syntax tree. So this is a demo of this. There are many other things, but I think that's enough. Okay, close this. Okay, what? Okay, I found you. All right. So again, these are some of the AST-based advantages. It allows us to select anonymous functions, like one-liners. As I said, like it's also can select comments and many other things. And try this to implement in Vim script, and you're gonna see this is really, really hard to do because there are just too many add cases, And just using a tool itself, it's really great. But of course, it's not all like shiny, we have problems. One of the problems is when you use tools, you have to make sure that it also works on each operating system. And one problem there is that each operating system uses a different path or path list or list ending. For example, here I have an environment variable called gopath. And when I output it in Linux and Windows below, you see that it's different, right? For example, Linux or macOS, like POSIX operating systems, they use, or POSIX compatible, they use colon. But in Windows, they use semicolon. So what if, for example, in your code, when you split environment variable and you want to get all the paths, this happens, right? So in Linux or macOS, okay, it works. But on Windows, you get the following. Oh, man, this doesn't work, right? It's total crap. Of course, I didn't know that. I don't use Windows. It's because all of the contributors, thank you. So what we do is we have a wrapper called path list separator, which automatically selects the separator. And then if you use it, you'll see that it correctly splits it. And then what we do is we have this util file, which has these commands like isvin or ismac, and then we have several other helper functions that just helps us to separate it or whatever. And so in 2016, the competition also increased, right? So I'm still the only one developing Vim-go, and I always had to keep up with the changes. I had to keep up with the fixes and stuff like that. Even though we have a lot of contributors, not many of them are like core contributors. They were just sending a pull request and they are gone. And I had to deal with it later. And unlike editors like VS Code from Microsoft or Goglan, they also they had companies behind them creating just editors for Go itself. It's getting harder and harder. Okay, in 2016, we also had a new logo, and I really think it's really super awesome. And another thing is I created this because I really want to help people. I just said, hey, okay, if you like Go, if you like Vim, you are in good hands. I've just created a tutorial just for you. You can use this to learn Vim-go or even learn Vim itself. And this has over 1,000 stars, and it's a huge success. And still people use it, and I think it's really important to have something like this. So in 2017, so we had many other feature improvements. We had folding support, test integration, and we had over 800 issues were closed. But for example, let me show you an example. This was the syntax-based folding, which, for example, closes all folds based on syntax. You can open them, or you can close a single fold, okay? And just an example. And then the next thing in what we did is this year, we added Travis integration. And I think this is also important because I was keeping, PRs were coming in, and we didn't have anything that tests them or whatever. So this is our Travis YAML file. Just two things are here important. On the below install, you see that we just installed Vim itself and just compiling it and using it inside the Docker image. And then we are calling the test file after installing Vim. Inside the test file, we are looking for files that ends with _test.vim. And once we have them, we are calling it with the script run test vim. So here are some of the test files. For example, def _test vim or format _test vim. So if you put here any file that has an _test vim, it will automatically pick up and the test will run. I made it so it's very similar to how we write tests in Go itself. So if you use Go and Vim-go, this is very similar. But in run test Vim, we also do another check. We only run functions that start with an uppercase test _. And we just call the test, and then we check if colon errors is empty or not. And that's a variable that is populated when you use the test functions inside Vim. Here is an example of it. you see my function start with _ test, and then I just call my code here, go format run, and then I call assert equal. So if there is a problem, v _ errors will be not empty, so it means there is a problem. If not, it's empty, and there is no problem. And here's the Travis output. You can see only which files are picked up and which functions. And the thing is, because of these functions, it allows you to have other individual functions that are not run. You know, you could have like, you could prepare your test for something else. And this is also something I really like because I hate writing help files. And this helps also people to write help files. If someone made something wrong, we call this linter. This checks for any problems in your in our documentation, and this is also in the test file. You know, so Travis also run this. So in this year, Vim-go also won the Google Open Source Award, and I'm really, really proud of this because it also shows the success of Vim-go itself. Because Vim-go is the most used editor for Go itself. And you might ask, how do you know this? Because Go itself made a survey, and because of Vim-go was chosen the #1 preferred editor. And I think that shows how powerful Vim is for Go, or vice versa. And of course, we had 2 new core contributors, Martin and Billy, and they are really like working hard to make Vim-go even better. And just some statistic, you know, we had like 0 stars. Now we have over 7,400 stars. And we had like a lot of contributors. Are there here any contributors to Vim-go? Here, just raise your hand. Just 1, 2, okay. Okay, I just wanna, coffee is on me, like later, just find me. Let's get a drink or coffee, you know. If there was anyone else, just find me, okay? I just really, really want to get something for you. And so what's next for the future? I'm gonna end. Okay, so the most anticipated, so this is the one thing that a lot of people want to get, debugging. The problem was always we didn't have any asynchronous API. So we now have it. And now we also have a tool that makes debugging easy. The only thing left is integrating it into Vim-go. Luckily, we have Metin started working on it. He's still working on it. It's work in progress. But next time, if you ask why debugging is not finished, go find Metin, because he's responsible now of it. So again, terminal integration in Vim 8 I think is huge. It enables us many, many great features. I'm looking forward to use them. And then, you know, like I also want to use more tools like make the syntax highlighting. It's still regex-based. I want to replace it with a AST-based tool. So during these 3-4 years, what went bad and still bad? So there was no synchronization between README or the documentation. Sometimes I had to put everything into README. People don't read the documentation, or they read the documentation like pro Vim users. They jump into docs/Vim-go text, but they don't read README, you know? So it's really hard. I don't know how to fix it. But what I did is I just removed anything from README. There is only one logo and some features. And everything is in docs. Another problem is compatibility between Vim versions. You know, it's really different. Now that we also have NeoVim and Vim 8.0, we get a lot of issues to Vim-go that says, hey, this is not working. And then we have to be sure that's always backwards compatible. It's really hard to get it right because one function might be not in that distribution, or one function is introduced later, which is really hard. And I think Vim lacks a really great UI tooling. And I think we still could do better there. What is the good about all these years? I think Go made it really, really easy because of the tooling. The tooling integrates very well. We listen to the users. We made Vim-go that it's delightful to use, it's beautiful to use. When you just install Vim-go, you have all the commands, all the documentation is really, really in a good shape. So Go loves Vim, I love Go, I love Vim, and it's the perfect combination. Thank you very much.